Ми, як були в Німеччині в таборі, тоді табори вже ліквідували. І кожен мусив собі пошукати місце, де поїхати, або вернутися назад на Україну, або їхати десь на захід. Ми в таборі, пригадав собі мій тато адресу своєї сестри в Cohoes. Знав на пам'ять. Ми написали листа до тети, до Марії і Петра Ракочих, що ми є в Німеччині в таборі, чи вони б згодилися нам вислати візу, на яку ми могли б приїхати до Америки, відробити, піти на працю і за зароблені гроші їм заплатити. Мого тата сестра дуже втішилася, як вона почула, що мій батько живе і має родину, і що йому треба виїхати з Німеччини десь у світ, бо немає де подітися, на Україну не може їхати, бо на Україну, якби ми вернулися, то ми просто були б поїхали на Сибір. України ми були б не бачили. Ми були б трактовані як шпигуни.
As you were saying, that you think that a lot of our people here in America, the Ukrainians, know the history better than the Ukrainians over there. That's true. Their history was submerged. People, the Russians would not let them know their history. They couldn't speak Ukrainian, only Russian history. As far as Russia was concerned, Ukraine didn't exist. They also felt, because Russia told them, that all the Ukrainian immigrants who the Germans took to Germany and who eventually went to America, Canada, Australia, and all over the world, that they were traitors and that they turned their backs on Ukraine and they left them to suffer. And our parents, went to a better life. Well, I never realized that, but I spent a lot of time with Father Vasily, and he told me, how they, I asked him, why do they kind of like look down at us? And he said, well, they feel blah, 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 like I just said. And but now they're getting more of that National Geographic and the History Channel in Ukraine, and they're starting to see what Nazism really was and what it did to our people and how our people suffered, and they didn't have a way of getting home. They didn't. They had no way of getting home. Also, after the war, our people were still under communism, and they had to suffer through all that post-war mentality of Stalin, and our parents did too. They didn't know if their families were alive or dead. I remember the first time my father got a letter from home after Stalin died, and he read that his mother and father were still alive. I was a little girl, and I was looking at this grown man crying tears of joy because he found out that his mother and father and his sister made it through the war. On the other hand, my mother got a letter that her father was killed in the war, her mother died the year before Stalin died, and the rest of her family is scattered and they don't know where they are. So on one hand we had great joy, on the other there was great sorrow. Because
the Ukrainian Catholic Church for so many decades, from 1945, 1946 on, was always called the Church of the Catacombs. It was the largest underground church within the world. I know specifically there are many instances here within St. Peter's and Paul's that we got together where we focused in on the Church of the Catacombs, where we donated money and funds for the Church of the Catacombs in Ukraine, just to show that we are a part of that Ukrainian nation, even though we may have been born here, such as myself, others such as my parents who had to flee Ukraine for political oppression and other reasons, or others that just came here on their own free will from Ukraine. But still, we all have a feeling and a tie that goes back to Ukraine. And it's very interesting that the word diaspora, the Ukrainian community here in the United States, diaspora, to break it down into its Greek term, means a segment, means a portion, means a branch. And I think that that's one of the interesting things about the Ukrainian diaspora, is that it is a segment, it is a portion, it is a branch of the Ukrainian nation. I think that they say that for Ukrainian immigration coming to the United States, that there have been 4 massive waves. The first wave came at the end of the 19th century, very early 20th century, and those were probably the forefathers and the founders of St. Peter's and Paul's Ukrainian Catholic Church. Second came before and after World War I. Obviously, the third massive wave came after World War II, the politically oppressed, and the latest wave came after Ukrainian independence in 1991. But going back to those forefathers, to the founders of our church in the late 1800s, early 1900s, I can say that they came probably for more economic reasons. Most of them came from Western Ukraine. It was difficult life in Western Ukraine, very rural type life. Obviously, to try to advance yourself or try to advance in terms of family situation, family living, needed a lot of money. And I think many of the people came over here for those particular purposes.
I think if I had been born in the village where my parents had been born and my older sister and brother, I certainly would never have become a teacher or an attorney or a judge. I doubt that very much. I'm very happy that my parents came to this country because I think I had advantages here and chances and opportunities here that I would not have had back then.
My parents came from Bowery, Ternopil, and they came here about 1912. And my mother worked in Harmony Mills, my father worked in, oh gosh, I called it hell where he was working there, my God, it was all fire and it was awful.
No to ропійські підписали ще, бо на парохії мусили ще підписати, що вони хочуть. Ну, а в той час отець Мартинюк, небіжчик був, то було багато, і ропійські згоджувалися, бо хотіли, щоб парохія ще збагатила. Бо старші вже вимирали, а молодих не було, а так була нагода, то ми приїхали новоприбулі.
I was born on the Ropitsky farm. My godmother and sponsor, Anna Ropitsky, after whom I'm named, was the lady that delivered me. I have very fond memories of the Ropitsky farm. As a child, my mother would bring me there, let me off there for a couple of weeks in the summertime, and I had all the fresh air that a child could endure at that time, and really enjoyed my stay with the Ropitskys. It was a big farmhouse. Weekends were always filled with people that they sponsored would come. Mrs. Ropitsky would cook up a storm. There'd always be lots of food and lots of laughter and lots of memories from everybody's lives in Ukraine and in Germany, and all the new things going on in the community and our church were always discussed. So I have wonderful memories during my childhood of my experiences there. It was always a Sunday getaway. After Mass, we'd get in the car and go to the Ropitskys. So I have very fond memories of